Hey everyone, I'm Julia Harder and I'm on the Google Enterprise team here in Mountain View. We're really excited to be doing our second Hangout on air today. And today we'll be chatting about security in the cloud as well as Google Apps security features and processes. Adam Swidler, who's a senior manager on my team responsible for Google Apps security, privacy, and compliance, will be moderating the conversation. So I will hand it over to Adam.
Thanks very much, Julia. Hello, everyone. Again, as Julia mentioned, my name is Adam Swidler, and I'm Senior Manager here in Google's Enterprise Division. And I'm really excited today to be joined by two of our Google Apps customers. First, Ali Ball, the CIO of ChipsAway. Ali, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good, thanks. Yeah, we're sharing a laptop here in London, actually, so we had a slight hitch earlier on. So, yeah, I'm great, thanks. Happy to be here. It's
truly a hangout. And then right next to Ali is Nick Blenkarn, Director of Severn Partnerships.
Hello.
Great. Thanks, guys, very much for joining us today. As Julia mentioned, we're really going to be focusing on some of the security and compliance aspects associated with Google Apps. But I did want to start off by letting each of you guys talk a little bit about what your firms do and what your role there is.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, I'm Ali. I'm the CIO of ChipsAway. We operate in 11 countries around the world where we own the master rights for. We've been using Google Apps since early 2011. We have a fleet of around 350 mobile operators in the UK and the core of people at the head office. We use apps for email. We share a lot of docs through apps. We have sites and training. We use a whole plethora for sharing material, training, intranet sites, I think, between our franchisees who are all over the field, tablet-based and mobile phone-based, and the users in head office.
And I'm Nick Blenkarn from Severn Partnership. I'm a director there. We're at the opposite end of the scale. We've been using for longer, but we're a smaller company. So we've got 30 people working across the UK and occasionally abroad. We moved into Google Apps to get security of data, access from anywhere, and to be able to use the collaborative documents, so both internally and externally with our clients.
That's great. So what I'd like to do is ask you each to maybe talk a little bit in more detail about your decision to move to Google Apps, where you were coming from, and specifically from a security, compliance, reliability standpoint, what were some of the questions and concerns that you guys had, and then how did you overcome them as you decided to move to Google Apps?
Should I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, starting back in 2006, when before Google Apps became Google Apps, and it was just being pulled in from Rightly, we were fairly early adopters, and having put certain key documents on there, we wanted to make sure we backed them up. So from a compliance point of view, we kept ourselves happy by backing them up on a daily basis. Then daily became weekly, weekly became monthly, monthly quarterly, and through the years, we gained trust that the data was going to be there. So having used Google Docs from a personal point of view, we then got to the stage of wanting to roll that out from a business point of view. We came from using Microsoft Outlook with 6 different versions on different platforms, sometimes ending up emailing themselves. But no, it was interesting, and what we wanted to do was simplify it. We didn't want 20 different versions of software. We didn't want to pay for a full new one. And we wanted to simplify what everybody did. We didn't want to use overcomplicated software that can do 90% of things that people don't want to do. We wanted to simplify it and use things that we use all the time, quickly and well and easily.
As our experience is pretty similar, I had done a Google Apps migration prior to working with ChipsAway. That was across 14 countries and 650 users. Specifically with ChipsAway, we had an in-house Exchange server. We had an external company supporting the Exchange server. We needed to be able to share information, collaborate. The documents were very key for us. We had the franchisees on a separate email domain to the head office, so we used that ability to consolidate it. We put Postinian on the back end of that to allow better spam filtering and archiving of the emails. So we used that and put in the structure in place, so we had the franchisees as a sub-organization of the head office. It also meant that we could then roll out the email platform to all of the mobile users, whether they were BlackBerry, Android, or iPhone. And the maintenance side is a lot easier with Google Apps. You don't need an Exchange administrator or an external company. That was a simplicity of it, and the data was a lot more safer and consolidated. We weren't backing up PSTs every night and wondering whether we could restore from them. We lost a lot of headache, and we simplified the process a lot. So with a disparate mobile workforce, that was kind of key. So that's where we kind of came from.
Great. So just kind of asking you to remember back, and Nick, for you, this is remembering back a number of years now, but what were some of the real challenges that you faced in those prior environments when it came to security and compliance of the data?
Back in 2006 when we started, it was really a trust thing. Are we going to actually have a broadband signal that we can keep going with? So we ended up getting mobile broadband as well, just to make sure we've always got a connection. And then a 56k connection just in case on a phone line, because once we've got it, we wanted to be able to keep hold of it. But really, with uptime of the system, not only making sure it's there, but making sure that we can always gain access to it, because with software as a service over the web, we didn't have the trust level that we'd be able to get a broadband signal and then be able to have uptime on the Google Docs system as well. But again, over time, we just carried on day after day after day without having any problems. So here we are 6 years later, and it is a trust thing. And I can't remember the last time we had any system downtime, which means we don't have a problem at the moment.
I think we had a similar experience, really. I mean, it's if you look at where cloud computing is now, there's a much higher trust model with cloud computing. If you were to go back a few years, it was people were a little bit more skeptical about it. They saw it as, well, it's the next level up from outsourcing. Well, to be honest with you, cloud computing is kind of where cloud computing delivers what outsourcing promised and failed in some areas. And we had, in-house servers and stuff, the Exchange servers, the data servers. We did back it off to an external, third-party data center in Docklands. But to retrieve stuff, if anything fell over, and it did fall over at times in, multiple businesses, we've not seen that level of downtime since switching to Google Apps. And it has allowed us to share stuff, trusted documents, to people outside of the company with partners that we couldn't have done before. So there is a big trust issue in switching to the cloud, but I think more of that trust has been negated by a high uptime. Yeah, high uptime, and over the last 2 to 3 years, it's I think people's perceptions are changing a little bit, and the ones that want to challenge the perception are possibly the ones that the ones that maybe need to think about how they look at IT differently. We need to look at these big infrastructures where billions of dollars are being spent and saying, we could never spend that money ourselves. So, let's make use of other people's professional environments and go with it. And we've never had a problem with it. So,
no, that's great. Earlier, Ali, I think you mentioned a little bit about some of the sort of administrative capabilities that came with Google Apps. So let me ask you guys to maybe dig a little deeper into the administrative tools that you use and find useful in your environment, and also maybe some of the security features that we've rolled out, and talk a little bit about how you guys have adopted those and how they've helped really secure your environment.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can talk specifically around the mobile side of things. We use the Google device policy on all of the tablets that we roll out. We use the Android tablets out in the field. The device policy gives us the ability to encrypt all of the data. So it's got 2 levels of password on there. The data's fully encrypted. We can locate the device. We can remote wipe it. We can lock the screen if it's not locked. So we've got a very high level of encryption. And also, I think specifically for Google Drive, as an application, we do work all over the UK, from John O'Groats to Land's End. There are times when there's no data connection. Drive is offline. We've got Google Apps offline as well. That data is encrypted by the Google device policy. So we're pretty, by putting the device policy on there, gives us very easy administration onto those mobile devices and a high level of security as well. So
for ourselves, we've gone with the 2-step verification, which I saw demonstrated to us. I thought, well, we've got to have that. That was great, and it's worked really well. I've been using it for about 1.5 years now, maybe a year. And I've had no problems with getting onto it. text message through. So I selected the phone, my mobile device, and it came through with the usual 6-digit code. So having that, and then keeping 6-digit codes backed up on something like Dropbox as a backup policy, works really well. So anybody with sensitive data shared with them has that in place. And for the administrative tools as well, we use the general audit tool, I think it is, through the admin section. So that allows us to see exactly, very easily, who's shared what, who's accessed what and when, who hasn't been accessing their docs, who hasn't been updating things, and what's shared outside the Google, our domain, our Severn Partnership domain. So that's critical for me, is knowing what's inside our severnpartnership.com domain and what's outside of it. And we can control that, we can audit it, and we can check it. So it makes me sleep at night and a lot happier.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, your microphone's back on. Yeah.
So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Did you mention, actually, Nick, that one of the audit solutions that you're using is one of the third-party solutions that's out there?
It's a third-party through Google Apps Marketplace, which I think is called General Audit Tool.
Okay.
But it's a very good solution for quickly doing a summary of exactly what's shared inside and outside. Do you use that one?
No, we use the standard. We look at the standard audit tools and the reports that come in the back end of Google Apps, and that's actually very good. Security logging and stuff. Who created a user account? When did they create it? Did they add them to a group? Delete them? What documents are shared? So we got a nice graphed environment of the documents are shared inside. Now it's the basic stuff that comes with it, and I think for us that was probably adequate in terms of the auditing. But yeah, there are a lot of other tools out there you can bolt onto it.
But we're also coming from different sides of the spectrum. Myself, we're a small company with 30 people. When we were offered the chance to have somebody install it for us, we actually just did it ourselves. Which, I'm not an IT specialist, but I still managed to go through and set it all up, roll it out through 30 people within about 2 or 3 days, and get to where we are. Yeah. So I'm still on a learning curve, which is great. But it just shows that you can get to a stage of fairly reasonable installation very easily without too much.
We did the previous company a couple of years ago. We did 14 countries and 650 users off Exchange 2010 to Google Apps. We didn't need the Exchange server administrator. We didn't have to constantly worry, oh my God, we've run out of space again. We need to buy some more storage area network space. It's run out, the PST needs backing up. So we actually managed to not have an Exchange administrator, and the first line support desk were able to deal with creating groups, creating accounts, changing passwords. Very simple.
That's great. So one of the things that sometimes comes up when companies and businesses and firms are looking at moving to the cloud and moving to Google Apps in particular is this notion of, where's my data located? And in fact, there's a question about that in the stream right now. So why don't I'm going to turn it over to you guys to say, did that question come up during your evaluation of these things? And how did you address it? And is it a concern at all?
Yeah, I think the first migration we did a couple of years back, it was very key. It was people were seriously, thought about, well, where's this data? How do we trust these people from Google that they've got all of our data? And we actually did we worked with the directors of the company, and we set up a pilot scheme and we tested it. We put some documents. I put some very sensitive documents up there from my stuff with bank account details and stuff, and we shared stuff. And I think that they just sort of built up after it was stable and working in this test environment for a few months, it just built up a lot of trust. And they said, okay, well, actually, does it matter where the data is? Because we know it's in a secured environment. That environment was actually more secure than the environment that we actually had as the in-house environment.
That's exactly the argument I turn around. Lots of people have asked me a similar thing, and the answer is exactly that. Yeah. What do you actually do at the moment? And what happens if you have a fire and then you can't find your backup you've got remotely? Just for a small company, that's critical.
Yeah, and I think it's a psychological thing as well. There are, I think, you look at banks. Let's not mention RBS at the moment, but let's take a look at banks, and they possibly have a lot more sensitive information stored in their systems than ChipsAway. You know, we repair vehicles. Yes, we store customers' names and addresses in the CRM solution. But you know what? If someone hacked into ChipsAway, they're not going to be able to do a multi-million-pound fraud. There are Google apps. I think the government edition is a lot stricter in terms of some of the protocols and stuff. I think it's a mindset. I think if you're going to constantly, oh God, do I trust them? Do I trust them? Do I trust them? I don't think you're going to innovate quickly. And I see that with a lot of IT directors who are happy to keep the status quo of what they've got because they feel secure with it. I think sometimes you just need to change and go with it and say, we've had no problems in four years of using Google Apps. So yeah,
I mean, it's also the business continuity side for us. We're a small company, but we rely on the data that we hold. And to actually get to know that if we have a problem, we can get access very quickly to that data from any other device. We can get up and running and communicating back with our clients immediately, with almost no downtime, and that's a big thing for us.
Right, and then I mean, just sort of commenting a little bit on the stream. One of the responses to the question about the data location was that Google has been safe harbor compliant for many, many years, and that's been one of the primary compliance vehicles that has allowed businesses that potentially have private information about EU citizens in their systems and being able to transfer that out of the EU. I'll also mention that we just announced a couple weeks ago our plan to support what are called model contract clauses, which is kind of an updated European Union created compliance vehicle that businesses of all sizes will be able to take advantage of online. Hopefully within a month or so, we'll have that available within the control panel, and you can kind of opt into a contract that would include those model contract clauses that would also help you in a situation where you need to be compliant to the European Data Protection Directive. So thanks for those of you on the air that chimed in with both the question and the answer. And that gives me a chance to remind people that if you are watching the stream on air and you do have questions, please feel free to post them in the stream on the Hangout post, and we'll pick them up as we go.
I think on that one, I think Facebook probably shares more of my data than anyone else in the world, so
I'll just leave that one alone. Nick, you had mentioned the two-step verification. I wanted to ask, are either of you guys using a single sign-on type of technology, or Ali, maybe had you used that at your previous implementation?
Yeah, I've used it at the previous appointments. It worked fine. It took a little bit of, to be honest, we were migrating off an Exchange 2010 server. It was actually the first 2010 migration to Google Apps ever. It took a little bit longer than expected, but 2 to 3 weeks later we had it all working. Yeah, it did take a little bit of configuring. Once it was there, it was absolutely fine. We had no problems with it. Where we are now, smaller business, we don't use it, but I know friends who do use it, and again have no problems with it. Once it's set up and it's configured, it's absolutely fine.
So a couple of, like I say, I guess a couple of months ago now, we rolled out a product called Google Apps Vault, which is a retention, archiving, and e-discovery product for Google Apps. And I wanted to find out if you guys sort of have needs in those areas, and if so, are you using that or thinking of using that tool? I know you mentioned, I think, some of the basic API stuff, but this might go a little bit deeper than some of that. Talk about your needs in those areas and whether or not you see Google Apps Vault as being a good fit there.
Yeah, I mean, we're using sort of Postini currently for archiving and stuff, and I think it probably makes logical sense for us to move to the Vault in a couple of months' time, because especially for retention of emails and conversations and stuff where people leave the network, it will be quite useful for us to be able to have a look at the archives of what's been going on. So it is something that we're going to look at in a month or two. But at the moment, currently, we're okay with the Postini archiving side of things. But yeah, it's the next logical progression for us to move into the Vault. So we'll look at that in a couple of months' time. But it looks like there's some good benefits for us. So
yeah, I think we'll definitely use it for mainly for people who are moving out of the company. So if somebody's moved out and we want to retain their Google Docs and mail, that will be perfect for us.
Yeah.
We have lots of local hard drives and backup from remote hard drives at the moment, because the survey data that we gather through laser scanning, used to be 10 years ago 1,000 points a day. The equipment we use now is 500,000 points a second. There's a bit of scalability going on there. So where we used to have 200 or 300 gigabytes is the whole hard drive for the whole company, a terabyte comes out of a job, no problem at all. So backing that up over the internet is a bit of an issue. Yeah, we tend to take it now to put it on a hard drive, take it to a server farm, they download it and bring us back a hard drive. And that's our second. But there's 2 tiers of backing up, and all the data that isn't 500,000 points a second can quite happily go in the vault from my point of view. And then it's parts, and I don't need to worry about it. That's the main thing for me.
No, that's great. And Ali, thanks for bringing up the Postini service, which we've had for a while to do some of the email archiving stuff. And definitely, as you described, the vault is sort of the next progression in that capability. Right now, it's doing a lot of what the Postini stuff did, archiving email. We have added support for chat messages in Google Apps Vault, which goes a little further than what we did with the Postini stuff. And then we've stated that over time, we intend to extend Google Apps Vault to support things like Google Docs and Drive and other data types that end up being stored in Google Apps. So I think, like the rest of the Google Apps suite, that's going to be an area where we see a lot of innovation and over time a lot of new capabilities coming to the service. And like all the stuff that we do in apps, as you guys have seen, it just sort of becomes available to users without any major upgrades or software distribution or anything of that nature.
Hopefully you've updated the interface from Postini, because it's a little bit geeky, the Postini interface. Works great, but it's I'm sure the Vault's got a nicer interface to it.
Yeah, we did in fact do the interface for Vault is based on the Google Apps control panel, so it's tightly integrated there, and it looks very similar to that. And we just announced, what was it, Tuesday of this week, that the interface for Vault, so the searching interfaces and the retention policy interfaces, are now available in 28 languages across the world, all the languages that the cPanel, the control panel, supports. Now, just to be clear, you can still archive and manage Gmail messages and chat messages in any of the languages that Gmail supports. So, that's like over 50 languages right now. It's just the actual user interface for Vault itself that's been deployed in those 28 languages across the world. And again, I think it's a great testament to the whole model of the cloud, right? We don't have to distribute a bunch of software packages to enable people to use this interface in a different language. So it's really, I think, a great testament to that. So one of the things that I think we've talked about a little bit, but I wanted to try to tease out a little bit more, is this notion of the types of things that you had to do before in your previous environments from kind of a standard security standpoint. So antivirus, anti-malware, operating system updates, browser. Let's talk about that a little bit. Compare and contrast what it was like before and what it's like now with Google Apps.
I'd say for us as a small company, not a huge amount different. I mean, we did a lot of work over the web anyway. If you're keeping an operating system, keep it up to date. If you're keeping a browser, we wanted to keep it up to date. We had antivirus, anti-malware. We swept the computers quite often. There's been no noticeable change really with us. We've kept that regime going, and that's, I think, seen as well for security in the browsers. The only difference is, because we work with Google Apps, we've moved on to Chrome. I use it personally on Safari as well, and did used to use Firefox. The move to Chrome's gone fairly smooth, and we just tend to think that that's probably best for us. If it's designed to work on there, we'll go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us the biggest thing was trying to convince some of the old guys in the company to switch off Outlook, of which we had a number of different versions. And once we'd actually convinced them to go and install Chrome and run their mail in the browser, which, to be honest, a lot of them had, a Gmail or a Hotmail or a Yahoo or an MSN or a Live account anyway. Once they realized it was very similar to that, that was the biggest thing for us, not having to patch these damn Outlook clients on these computers. You could log in from anywhere and not have to worry about updates and stuff. It was just done in the background. It saves a huge amount of time, especially when you've got 650 desktops running different versions of Outlook. So that's a huge change for us. That was a big change. And currently where we are now, the people can just log in. The directors can go home, log into their email, and get their docs and their apps and look at the videos and stuff. And it's second nature to them now. And there's no updating. We don't update anything. I don't worry about babysitting an Exchange server or PST files or patches and
yeah,
stuff
we had a lot of issues with people hanging on for grim death to their Outlook PST files, and eventually, and they got used to running the sync program, but gradually the syncing has sunk, and they've realised it's already synced somewhere else, and there's no reason to move on. So the syncing is sunk. The syncing within Outlook, that is. Yeah. So they're already synced. In Gmail, and then we get a series of questions. Oh, but I can do this in my Outlook. Well, actually, you can do that in Gmail, just slightly differently. Oh, right. And when we get that way, and they get used to working with collections and folders, and the fact that they can move their mail around and organize it and find it critically, you're not looking for archive number 17. You're just searching within, like a Google search, within your mail. Once they actually figure out they can do that, they tend to be converts.
Yeah, as was archiving 18, actually.
Yeah.
The Outlook syncing is sunk. I think that's going to be the headline from this Hangout.
Yes, I wasn't meant to be too pointed, but yes, it seems to be.
So again, I encourage anyone that might be listening on the air to submit their questions in the comment stream. We've taken a few that have come in. I mean, we talked a little bit about sort of the mobile device management, and I think, Ollie, you actually went into a decent amount of detail there. But that is an area, I think, that's really of concern to folks right now, especially in the small, medium, and even obviously the large-sized businesses. But this notion that you've got workers that are constantly out on the road. Hopefully, there's sales reps that are in the field trying to close deals and other examples. But talk a little bit more about how the use of Google Apps has enabled your people to sort of be anywhere, be on any device, and how you've been able to kind of support that from a secure and confident and trustworthy standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of looked at this bring your own device policies, and so there's a lot of talk about that at the moment, and I think for us it was key to get the adoption spread quickly to allow people to use different devices. I mean, we support anything from the iPhone for apps and docs and stuff. We've got a whole range of Galaxy tablets, phones, from the Galaxy S2, S3, the Galaxy Note, the 7-inch, the 8.9-inch, the 10.1-inch. We allow people to take whatever they wanted because that sped up the adoption. And with the security, the device policy installed on all of them, we were happy that if they lost their device, we could remote wipe it. If they lost it, if it broke and they dropped a sledgehammer on it, it was absolutely fine. Buy a new device, log in with your Google Apps account, and everything synced through. So all of the sites that we put up through Google Apps, the Google sites, where we store data and documents and share it with them, we couldn't have had that ability before to do something like that. So it basically gave us the ability to act as if we were a company with an IT budget of £25 million. It gave us tools, secure tools, to be a bigger player basically, and to make use of this stuff at a much lower cost of entry. So
hopefully soon you'll be adding some Nexus 7 tablets to your fleet out there.
Oh, and then a Nexus Q as well, probably. Yeah.
Nick, what about on your side from a mobile standpoint?
From a mobile standpoint, we had a fleet of BlackBerries. We ditched the fleet of BlackBerries and went for a fleet of HTCs and Samsungs and one iPhone, which I have. We've also got a fleet of iPads, and between all the devices with secure wipe code on them for actually wiping your finger on the HTC devices or typing in a code. We have that enabled on the iPads, the HTCs and the iPhones, and then with the two-step verification on top of that for those people with secure documents. It works really well, and it does give us the flexibility that it's speed of return for our clients. They want to know an answer, and they want to know it quickly. The pace of life is generally sped up, and if you can go with that and just work with it, then when I'm on a train going down with a 3G connection with an iPad or an iPhone, I can switch it on, switch it off, and just work. I've got access to my documents straight away, and it's productive time. It saves me playing Angry Birds. which is a bit of a change and a shame, but I've got more productive time there. I can answer emails at my leisure. I can turn it off in 2 seconds like any other tablet, jump off the station and get in the car and go. So, you know, it adds flexibility. I think the worst case I've had was having to write a summary for a presentation to be given in United Arab Emirates. And the presentation was written. It was then turned around. They said they wanted a different focus on the presentation. So I had to pull across to the motorway substation, get the iPad out, log into my Google Docs, rewrite the wording of the document that I had, send it off by email to get it into a deadline 15 minutes later, which was then accepted, and we had a great conference. But
you weren't tempted to play Angry Birds then?
yeah, it just
fantastic. So let's see. We did have a question that came in the stream about the fact that Google doesn't contractually guarantee that we will never lose data, which is true. So, you know, tell us a little bit about how you guys sort of overcame those concerns about loss of data, et cetera.
Well, to be honest with you, we had I think it's a psychological thing. It's as much as anything. Could you trust anyone that you've never met in the world before? No. Do I trust this guy sitting next to me? I don't know. I've only just met him today. I don't know. Seems okay. If I gave him something, would he lose it? Possibly. Yeah. He might be my my systems admin guy who went to the pub and had 4 or 5 pints of beer and had a gripe at the head office and decided to erase all the data on the Exchange server. Could I trust him? Probably not. But you have to. When your sysadmin's working for you, you've got to trust him.
What, do you trust somebody with your money in their current account?
Not yes, no.
So there is a level of trust involved with all these things, and I think to realise that is it more secure for me to put in my back garden or in my wardrobe or in a bank? I might not trust the bank or a shoebox. Yeah. But it's the same with data. I think is it more secure to put it into your triple backed up services that have X number of security levels built into them, or to trust to the competence of 2 or 3 hard drives that we take out remotely beforehand. So, the hard drives can go pop, one of them could be lost, you might not be able to have the power plugged into one of them, it might go pop. It's a trust level. And
right.
we view it from the partnership as it's a heck of a lot better than what we had before. Yeah. It's way stages better. And somebody not trusting that, I would turn the question around and say, is what you do better than what we do? And the answer probably is no.
Right, and I think that lots of companies that may be watching this that are considering moving to Google Apps, everybody needs to establish that trust on their own through the use of the system. And you guys described how you were able to do it. I think it's fantastic to hear it from someone that's actually done it, and hopefully that helps accelerate people in their cycle to reach that level of trust. We did have another question, a request for clarification on that whole model contract clauses thing that I talked about before. So we did blog about this on the Google Enterprise blog. So if you want to go look up model contract clauses there, you can see more of the details. But basically, in hopefully about a month or 6 weeks' time, inside the control panel, Google Apps customers will be able to go through essentially a click-through agreement that would contain these model contract clauses, and you would then have that compliance vehicle in place for your use of Google Apps. So again, for companies that have concerns in those areas, I think that's going to be a helpful feature, because this is something that is recommended essentially as a compliance mechanism by the various data protection authorities throughout the European Union. So we look forward to making that available to customers here very shortly. Here's another kind of interesting, almost philosophical question that came up that I'll ask you guys to talk about. This is from Francois. Is security more a technical or more a human issue, do you think?
Yeah, it's both. It really is both. It's
probably less technical now.
Yeah.
With the advent of software as a service, you're almost taking away a whole level of, has somebody physically got the hard drive? Are they going to drop it? Are they going to not back it up? Are they going to leave it in the boot of their car and have it stolen?
Did the politician leave it on the park bench?
Exactly, yeah. So that kind of level has gone, but you've still got the human level of access and deletion of data. And,
I think that's been. I mean, if you look at, I mean, even going back to people like Kevin Mitnick, infamous hacker, many years ago, most of his hacking was social. It was, and then the social hacking still exists. It doesn't matter what security you put in place. If someone can talk their way into an organisation and get someone's username and password, which is still prevalent, then I think it's a human thing as well. But it's an interesting. We could probably have a whole separate hangout on that, actually.
Coming next week, hangout on security, human or technical. No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Of course, it's both. I think it's nice to have certain technologies in place, especially things like two-step verification, which, even if someone did socially hack out your ID and password, at least you'd still have that extra layer. Now, of course, they could attempt to hack that out of you too. They could then literally get you on the phone and say, now click your two-step verification icon and give me that code. So I think you do also need to rely on some level of awareness on the end user's side about how to use the internet in sort of a safe and logical and reasonable manner. And again, people are using the internet in their personal lives, in their business lives. So I think over time, that is an increasing level of awareness and behavior attention that's paid to it. We've got time for maybe 2 more questions. We wanted to try to wrap this thing up in 45 minutes. So let me go for just a couple more that are coming in. So this one comes in from Johan. So obviously, I'm sorry, that was the question on the MCCs. There's another question from William here. Obviously, Google, a lot of our business comes from the search advertising that we do. And so some of the companies that are looking at apps have a concern about, will the data they put in apps somehow be resold by Google to third parties or otherwise used in the search advertising? How did you guys address that within your firms?
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, that never really came up on either of the. There was never a concern of, are they going to sell any of my data to advertise? I mean, we don't have any adverts in the Google Apps business account anyway. It was actually a non-issue from that instance. From both the deployments I've done, no one questioned it. Actually, I think it's one of those. Maybe it's high on some people's agenda. It certainly wasn't very high on our director's agenda at that point. And I think it's a psyche more than anything, really.
I think the type of data we hold isn't the type of data that could be resold anyway. It's relevant to us, but it's not really relevant to anybody else. So, yeah, it didn't come up as an issue with it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, from the sort of official Google standpoint, I want to be very, very clear. We do not sell anybody's data to third parties. I mean, that's fundamentally not even how internet advertising works. But in particular around Google Apps, we are very clear about ownership of the data. Google doesn't own the data, and that is very explicitly defined in the terms of our contract, the terms of service for the product. So I think whenever anyone has a concern about that, you need to, if they really are that focused on it, they just need to look at the terms, and it's very clear. And as you guys mentioned, there is no advertising in the Google Apps for Business edition either. So. Another question came up, and this is another one that comes up a lot when you're in the security and compliance area, about government access to data and things like the Patriot Act. Did that come up for you guys? And if so, how did you address it?
It came up for us in that other people were mentioning that might be an issue. In that we didn't really know. The majority of our contracts are not government contracts. There wouldn't be issues with the data that we hold. But we held in the back of our minds that if we were going to have any secure data contracts, we just keep those separately. But there's always levels in the data that we hold. The emails that go through to and forth would probably be the sensitive issue. But no, it's not something we've come across that's been raised with us as an issue at the moment.
Yeah, it's not come up. We don't do any government work anyway, or any secure work of that nature. So, and I think a lot of companies are probably like that as well. It's never cropped up as a major issue for us. So, a non-starter for us really in that sense.
Great. Kind of back on the administrative tools front, we have a question coming in here. What happens when a user leaves the company, employee leaves the company? How do you guys handle that, or are you able to still maintain access to their email, for example?
Yeah, and some of them we will keep their accounts active. Obviously, change their password, and but we'll generally keep the accounts active for 2 to 3 months, and we'll just log in. One of the directors will look at the account, or the next person in line will just monitor it for any information coming in. We'll assign ownership of any Google Apps and Docs that were created on that account into another account, and then after a 2 to 3 month period, we'll just kill the account off. But yeah, we just change the password. It's absolutely fine, and with 2-step authentication in there, there's no way anyone's going to get into it. Whether they left because they were disgruntled, or whether they left to move on for pastures new.
Yeah, we do exactly the same thing, and then use aliases on the email account to pull in email in the future, should they receive any from potential clients that happen to be working with them.
Yeah.
So with combination of aliases, the admin, top-level admin ability to move Google Docs across and park them, then it's great. And you could always, once you've changed the username and password, which you have the admin ability to do, retain emails as archived within that account, if it's not sensitive. So the next user can come along and put email on top. But I would like to look into the ability to use vaults for that. So.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the use cases for Vault as well. So we're getting close to the end of the session here. I wanted to just kind of bring it to a close and maybe ask you guys very briefly summarize. Do you feel more secure in Google Apps versus your previous environment, and just 1 or 2 really high-level headlines about why that is?
Yes, and I can sleep well at night. I don't have to worry about relying on one person to administer a system. I've got a whole bunch of extremely clever people looking after my infrastructure and software.
Yeah, I mean, again, yes, for me, and the key thing was I've removed from a laptop with a PST file with all my data on it. I've now free for that. I can get rid of my laptop in 2 minutes' time and pick up another laptop. I'm logged into a MacBook Pro that isn't mine, but I've got access to all my emails, all my documents, and when I shut that down, I can pick up my iPhone and do the same thing. How flexible is that?
Well, that's fantastic. What a great way to end it. So, Nick and Ali, I want to thank you both very much for joining us today.
No worries.
And everyone that's on their stream, thank you for tuning in and sending in your questions. We'll have a recording of this posted online that you guys can share with friends and family and coworkers. And again, thanks very much for joining us. Have a great day.
No problem. Thanks so much. Cheers.
A big thanks to Adam also for moderating. So thanks, Adam. Thanks, Ali. Thanks, Nick. And to everyone tuning in, keep following our Google Plus stream on the Google Enterprise page for all of the news about Google Enterprise and Google Apps. And we'll be bringing more Hangouts to you in the future. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Julian.